Okay, here we go.
Sailing over the Dogger Bank, now wasn't it a treat? The wind was blowing east northeast, we had to give a sheet.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hello.
We are back for the third and final of our listen-alongs with the Teacups, and with me, Pete Ord. They very kindly asked me to host these, and today we are discussing the brand new, much-anticipated album, which is this one. Hopefully some of you have had this on your doorsteps by now, which is In Which by... Oh, look at that.
Oh, come on. Stop showing off.
Yeah, they haven't made it. They haven't made it to America yet.
Sorry, Alex.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Al. So yeah, we're going to have a chat through the album In Which ... Do you think we need to say the ... when we say what it's called?
It honestly just reminds me of that bit in Mamma Mia when they say, how they're in the diary. Does anyone else know Mamma Mia?
Nope.
I've seen it.
In which case, I'll not get into it. It's
the listener,
you can.
the listener/viewer may well.
That's a very good point. So
if anyone knows the film, they'll know what we're talking about.
So essentially, it's anytime she's writing in a diary, and anytime she gets to something that's potentially lewd, she just goes ... instead. So everyone's kind of regarding that as like between the lines, as it were.
He took me out for a lovely dinner, and then afterwards ...
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
The full title technically is In Which a hunt is undertaken, wears a town with much tea is drunk, institutions are described, the new season is turned, a life is lived, a great ship is built, and then lost bonds are reaffirmed. That's the full title.
So if we're being, pernickety, we really do need to say the whole thing.
So Pete, can you introduce it, but with the full title and in the style of Mamma Mia, please? Off you go.
Yeah. We're going to edit all of this out, right? Pete, you'll fix this in post. Yeah.
Just start again.
I think the ... is required when introducing it. I was going to say I love the artwork for this album, which is by the wonderful Ellie Grassick. And I was just going to start, before we start listening to it, by asking you guys about the artwork and the title and just kind of where those... Because I feel like they're connected in many ways.
Yeah.
So I think we were inspired. It's always really, really hard naming albums. It's always tricky to try and kind of come up with something that, kind of encompasses the whole kind of idea behind the thing. And I think eventually we struck upon this idea of different stories being told and this kind of particular style of like classic literature a lot of the time. And especially when you have like chapter headings. So first of all, we have some of the artwork is really inspired by these like beautiful illuminated manuscripts, which is why, so we have things like on the inside cover, we have some of these like kind of illuminated letters for like our names and things like that you'd have like at the start of like, a nice book of fairy tales or like illuminated manuscripts and things like that. And kind of this idea of like, you might have a chapter, which, before the chapter even begins, has these kinds of write-ups. It has, this kind of thing like, chapter 12, in which, a hunt is undertaken, or like things like that.
My son Oliver is really into Winnie the Pooh at the moment, and they all start like that. And so is in which Pooh gets stuck into a tight place.
Yeah.
Which actually, out of context, sounds really bad.
There was a tour, I seem to remember, years before this album, where I think, Rosie, you'd maybe read one of these books that had chapters like that, and it ended up, whatever the thing undertaken was, ended with, and everyone was sad. And so in which something, and everyone was sad. And it just, I think because we'd been on the road for ages and we were tired, like we'd be having conversations, and every third sentence somebody else would append, and everyone was sad. And it just became like this running joke while we were on the tour, and it kind of harks back to that time, I think, as well.
But but then the name kind of then linked in with the artwork quite nicely, and I think the artwork is also a nice continuation from the second album, because the second album had this whole thing where it had features of the different songs in the artwork, and we kind of carried that on again in this album, more in that kind of like classic style of like fancy one image type things,
like lovely woodcuts. Yeah,
exactly. But it kind of still has that. We really like that idea of having elements of the songs on the album, because you can people can look at it and it's like you appreciate it as a piece of art, but then once you've listened to the album, you can appreciate it in an entirely different way because you notice the elements of the different songs in the artwork.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think elements of it look like things that you'd find on cushion covers in a country pub.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then the other most noticeable thing is we'll get this out straight away, but this is a whopping 19 tracks long.
But it's still only just over 45 minutes or something. Like, we tried our absolute hardest to make it the longest thing ever, and it's still not very long.
Long enough, shall we say?
Well, it was an interesting.
Absolutely.
It was an interesting approach to this album when we were putting the what songs we want on the album together. Because unlike the other, well, there was multiple aspects to this, which I'm sure we'll go into later on as well. But one of the big aspects was that this is our last album. We're like wrapping up our musical journey together, as you mentioned in the last one, and you may well know already. And so it was a matter of wanting to include a lot of our songs we haven't recorded, and there were songs that we hadn't arranged that we'd really wanted to, that we wanted to get down as a record, and there were also types of songs that we hadn't really done that we really wanted to be able to grapple before the end of our musical journeys, which is why I think it's also a longer album and track list wise anyway, because we wanted to complete our musical journey together with all the things that we'd wanted to achieve, and
You're
I
absolutely
think
right.
we've
Yeah,
successfully done that.
Yeah.
I'm really very happy with what we've got.
I guess part of it as well is there's been a bit more of a gap between the second album and this one than there was between the first two. I mean, the second album, we recorded it in 2014, I want to say, and it came out in 2015. And then, 5 years later, it's 5 years worth of material. So it's kind of, it's been a while.
True, very true. All right, well, let's kick straight off and have a listen then, shall we?
Where is Henry Adams now that planned the Agamemnon, founded on the River Plate in Maldonaldos Bay? Oaken and blood of her, his fine one, his darling. Sink him in his hammock, boys, he's gone far away. Oaken and blood of her, his fine one, his darling. Sink him in his hammock, boys, he's gone far away. Where are all the Bewley boys that built the Agamemnon? Let them lie neath waving grass, contented where they lay. Swords and swinging riveters, their sounds will not be waking them. Sink them in their hammocks, boys, they've gone far away. Swords and swinging riveters, their sounds will not be waking them. Sink them in their hammocks, boys, they've gone far away. Where is Captain Nelson now that sailed the Agamemnon? Fought and beat the Spanish crews in Cape St. Vincent Bay.
I really enjoy any time that Will and Kate sing together because your voices just go so nicely. Yeah.
I was also going to mention the utterly wonderful panning on this track, and I think it goes through the album. Listening it through headphones and hearing this where we are in the space is really lovely.
It's another really strong opener. We definitely have this nice kind of it seems like we like to do with opening tracks. We have a punchy and everyone kind of all together. It's a very kind of interlocked sound right from the get-go.
And I really like Alex's part in this one because he both dips into that really lovely bass voice he has, but sort of comes up and down. It's not all completely a bass part. It's kind of, it really flows. It's nice.
Yeah, I feel like in this album in whole, Alex really shows off a lot more of his higher range than he has done in previous albums, and to really nice effect.
That's mostly because I moved to the US and was singing with you guys less and lost some of my bass range. To achieve some of this recording on this album, I had to be really tired and maybe hungover.
Where is Henry Adams now that planned the Agamemnon, founded on the River Plate in Maldonaldos Bay?
Oak and iron and blood of her, his fine one, his darling. Sink him in his hammock, boys, he's gone far away. Oak and iron and blood of her, his fine one, his darling. Sink him in his hammock, boys, he's
The ending
gone
of this is
far
mint.
away. Sink him in his hammock, boys, he's gone far away.
There's my bassy bass.
I was going to say there's definitely more than one of you there. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's maybe two or three Alexes there.
Yeah, I remember distinctly that bit of recording, and we had to kind of like work really. I was so because that really low note was barely audible, and we had to get so close to the microphone.
Yeah, you were basically swallowing it, weren't you?
Yeah.
What's going to be quite interesting about this album, I think, as we go through, is that there's much more than the other two. Well, completely differently to the other two, is that there's quite a lot on here that we've either never performed out or have only done once or twice. Because this particular one, Paul Davenport gave me a CD of stuff he wasn't he'd worked on in the past and decided he wasn't going to use, and this was on there, and the it's a poem that he put a tune to, and I absolutely loved it, and we were already starting to think about recording the album, and I thought I really like this one, I think this is going to be really good, so I played it to the rest of you obviously, and we decided to try and get it arranged to go on the album. So we've never actually performed it, and to be honest, I don't think I can remember the words. I don't think I ever completely learned them. So I think I'm going to have to go away and learn it now. But
it's a brilliant song though, isn't it? I remember
It's
when
fabulous.
you first sang it to me, and you kind of said, "Oh, we're not sure about it for the album because we've not really finished an arrangement yet, and etc." But I just think it's such a good song. Paul Davenport's a great songwriter. I know he didn't write the words for this, but what a cracking tune to fit that poem as well.
Yeah, really
And it goes
love
back to what I said on the second album about Sugar in the Hole. This one just fits your voice wonderfully. Like your delivery in this is wonderful. You've kind of got it fits nice in your range, but it also has that kind of slight swing to it that really suits your style. And you've got in singing it, you've kind of put in some of these really lovely little syncopations and emphasis into sections, which sort of really rolls the thing along.
Riveters in particular, I really like the way that's come
Swords
out.
and swinging riveters.
Yes.
It's really good.
Yeah. And I like the movement of the tune as well, particularly in the chorus, the "Oh, can iron and blood of her, his fine one, his darling." I love going from right the way down. You know, it's really kind of really nice. It's flowy. You know, it's great.
It's
really
yet another
enjoyable.
kind of recurring theme there. Songs that are fun to sing. They feel nice in your voice, if that makes any sense.
Totally. Next.
Great. Okay, what do we got up next?
So I guess this next song is kind of a similar approach to what I've done a lot with songs. I'm not really much of a songwriter, though that will change later in this album. But I've been one like Paul Davenport has done on that first track, is taking words from things and mashing tunes together or writing tunes to existing poems or songs that are collected without a tune. And this is one of those. And it's one of those stories, one of those folk songs you can find everywhere. It's huntsmen go off and one thinks it's one thing, one thinks it's another thing. No, it's actually something really silly, blah, 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 blah. Carry on. Yes. Are you making a point, Pete?
No, sorry, I was just getting it ready and it happened a bit too quickly.
Fine, I'm saying no more. Actually, no, I do want to say something because this was collected by an incredible song, a folk song collector, education reformist, and folklorist called Olive Dame Campbell, and she goes unrecognised a lot, which is a real shame. She was the one who was responsible for showing Cecil Sharp and telling Cecil Sharp about folk songs in the Appalachians. And she then took him around to all the places that she'd already collected songs from. And then her and Cecil Sharp published the English folk songs from the Southern Appalachian Mountains together. And then in later editions, her name was removed from the front and was merely put as a footnote, including some songs collected by Olive Dame Campbell. And so my hatred of Cecil Sharp grew more when I learned about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's an incredible woman, incredible song collector, and she also, what made me find out about her, when I moved to Medford, Massachusetts, I was looking, like we all do when we live somewhere, we're looking for the local folk history of where we are, looking for the songs, the traditions, and I found out about Olive because she grew up like 2 blocks away from where I am now. And so that's how I found out about her, and this sort of just took on this amazing journey of this person. So I highly recommend, to stop me saying any more, because this is not about Olive Dame Campbell. Go and search Olive Dame Campbell on Google, but not until after you've finished watching this listening party. Pete, you should have just carried on playing it, honestly.
Well, here's 3 jolly huntsmen.
3 jolly huntsmen a hunting off Cape Ann, and what we did find there I'll tell you if I can. We hunted and we hollered, and the first thing we did find was Cape Ann's lighthouse, and that we left behind. One said it was Cape Ann's lighthouse, the other he said nay. He said it was a sugar loaf with the paper torn away, with the paper torn away. Oh, we hunted and we hollered, and the next thing we did find was the moon in the firmament, and that we left behind.
It's the first of several mentions of the moon, which was kind of an unintentional theme throughout the album.
It was a Yankee cheese with a quarter cut away, with a quarter cut away.
Something I find very interesting about recording generally is the level of detail you can get into and trying to match the way I say things to whoever is leading the song. So, for example, the way that Alex says things like quarter is different than the way I say them. But if you're leading the song, I've got to try and match how you're doing it, and it's just really interesting to get right into that nitty-gritty to do it, you know.
And we hollered, and the next thing we did find was a fox in the undergrowth, and that we left behind.
A verse written by Will.
Yes, very true.
The really thing that I liked about this one the most, in terms of singing it and arranging it, performing it and stuff, is something we hadn't done before, which was when we ended up calling it duison for sort of shorthand, because there were 2 groups of 2, so there's only 2 lines, there's only a melody and 1 harmony, but 2 sang melody and 2 sang harmony, and it gives a really interesting sound that we hadn't used before, which I think is really interesting.
It's another instance of our voices, yours and mine, Kate, really being we like to kind of lean into that, the kind of let's have them be as close as they can.
It's good fun. I really enjoy doing that with our 2 voices. It's
fantastic. The real kind of the moment we know we've nailed it is when my mum says she can't tell the difference.
Yeah. It's funny. I really like that one because it doesn't really have like it's 9 o'clock in the morning here. Give me a break. Right. And it doesn't really have a bass part again, which is I think sounds really nice. It gives a very different sound to that. It's kind of similar to what we did, I think, on the second album, isn't it? We had this kind of like this bell ringing, which was kind of like not really a bass part into a bassy song with Mice and John, and this one is the other way around. So it's kind of got like the 2 kind of elements we do really nicely. And I also really like when I brought that to the group, it was minus a verse and it didn't really have a conclusion. And I really liked that conclusion verse that I think we just came up with organically.
Yeah.
I've told you all I can. It's just a really nice ending to it. And you made that song so lovely. But
that's a really nice song you brought to the group.
Yeah, it's great.
Absolutely.
It's also
really
the continuation of a really bad habit I have. I do perform solo, and so I make all these sort of like put all the solo repertoire together and go, oh, this will sound so much better with someone else. So I'm either ends up being a Teacups material or material with my friend Nicola, and then I end up with no solo material again. But it's totally worth it because it sounds so good with you 4, you 3, and me.
Something.
Pete, you had no hand in this.
You would have thought. Something I actually really love about this one and the one that the next one that we'll listen to as well is something that I think we've gotten a lot better about in the last few years in terms of our arrangement style, having more textural variety as well as like harmonic variety. Because that one and the next one have a lot more unison than we felt, I think, comfortable doing earlier on, and kind of people singing in what we've termed duison, which is where like Alex and I sing the same thing but an octave apart, and then Will and Kate sing something together, and it's just got this lovely kind of almost like a 12-string guitar sort of vibe to it in terms of like the same sounds in different voices kind of thing. I just really like that. I really think it's a useful arrangement tool to be using, you know?
And I think that there's really something to that as well. I'll just quickly add on the idea that in our earlier albums, what you said briefly about it's more unison than we felt comfortable doing earlier, I totally agree. There's a level of, it's not quite accurate to say simplicity, but there's a level of like something that is on the surface quite simple but done really, really well, that to me at least personally is almost more impressive than something that's really kind of big and fancy and gilded and full of ornaments. And I think that kind of there's an element of showing off how clever we can be by doing so much in our earlier albums, which I don't think there's a problem with. I think it's a very kind of florid style in a lot of ways. And then with this album, we're showing off what we can do by holding back. And I really like the difference with that.
But I think that's just classic maturity, isn't it? In all musicians, is kind of learning that. And I think what you're saying, Rosie, about how as you've grown as a group, your textural arranging is, I totally agree with it. And it's really interesting because I was thinking about this a little bit when we were listening to the last one, and now coming to this one and thinking, actually, I don't feel like I did very much on this album in many ways, which is a good thing, really, because I think on the last one, I probably felt that that I had to help find the textures in the tracks that were there with layers or not layers and that kind of thing. And I feel like that was less required in this album in many ways, because you were already doing it. You were already creating that kind of interest, I think. So I think it's a good point. Okay, let's crack on. What do we got next? Oh, let's just jump straight into the next one.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, the weary cutters, they've taken my laddie from me. Oh, the weary cutters, they've taken my laddie from me.
What you really can't tell in that is that it is three voices singing in unison, and it is so magical. And we tried adding me in at the beginning, and we were talking about this in the last album too, about starting to save the bass voice for later on when it matters, and this song really does that.
I think it's so powerful with the bass in particular as well, to hold it off almost too long.
They never come in the day, they always come in the night, and they steal the laddies away. Oh,
This is another one that we did kind of by accident.
They've taken my laddie.
Sorry, I just realising Alex had just come in.
Oh, the weary cutters, they've taken my laddie from me. They've shipped him far away foreign, with Nelson all on
This is another one. It's like exactly like Oxford City, where I had a similar conversation that we worked a long time on a bass part, and actually it was so powerful having me and Rosie doing that different octave melody. It just sounded really lovely. So I'm either in this tune singing unison or doing a very, very simple bass line on that bit.
I love that little drop off in your part there, Will, as well. That's just that little moment.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, this was another one that we did by accident, because I'd known about the song for a really long time, but it always struck me as quite a... Not that I'd ever tried, but just really hard to do something with, hard to harmonise, you know, a difficult tune, not sure what I'd do with it, you know, and never really thought about it. And then somebody came to us with like a commission, essentially. They were doing a fine art project about press ganging and issues around that kind of thing, and needed some songs from this region, and so we did it kind of for a job, essentially, and it came out so nicely that it ended up staying in the repertoire.
When I look to the south, I
know exactly what you mean, Kate, but I also find the idea really entertaining about accidentally arranging a song.
They've taken my laddie from me. Oh, the weary cutters, they've taken my laddie from me. I'll give the cutters a shilling.
I think also it's worth saying, like, this song really shows Rosie off as well to great effect. Like, this lovely kind of just high fluting voice that just kind of soars. Yeah, it's lovely.
I don't think you could have done that 2 albums ago, though. I think there's something about in the maturity of your voice on this that I think you touched on it a bit last time about singing highly and quietly. I don't think you'd had this. I don't think you had this control before that you do now.
One thing I really like about this arrangement as well, and it's also made really effective with how Pete's produced it as well, is we use silence a lot in this song, and actually we use silence more in this album than I think any of the others as well, and it's really powerful.
Right.
Oh, the weary cutters, they've taken my laddie from me. Oh, the weary cutters, they've taken my laddie from me.
I'm just really happy with how that one turned out.
It sounds so polished, doesn't it? I just think there's such a warmth to the whole thing all the way through.
Absolutely.
It gave me chills, that one, in a good way.
Oh. That one's a
It is.
Yeah, quite good that.
If you don't get that reference, watch the other parties.
Yeah.
So we come next to the first of what are named the vignettes in the album. So I thought this is probably a good time to talk through the vignettes and kind of what the thinking behind them is and that kind of thing. And I think it's kind of I'll let you guys talk about. There's kind of a vignette each, isn't there? So maybe you can say who's this one is and where it comes from and all that kind of thing.
Well, I think the idea of the vignettes originally came from Kate. Because I don't know if you want to talk about it a bit more yourself, Kate, but with the idea of what actually ends up being Vignette 2, The Harvest Jug. Do you want to say a bit about that and then we can build on that?
It wasn't a deliberate thing. It was just that my one, which we'll come on to in 3 or 4 tracks' time, was just a tiny little snippet of words that I'd been carrying around thinking I must do something with these for about 15 years. And then all of a sudden this sort of tune came to me one day and I just really liked it, and it was so short and I thought, well, it's not really a song, and I'm not much of a word writer either, really, and I just thought, I wonder if it could it be used just as it is. So I kind of brought it to you guys and said, you know, I've got this little thing, I think it sounds really nice, I've always wanted to use it, I'm not really sure how to make it into more of a thing. How about if it was just a thing in itself and we all had a similar thing that just reflected our musical personality, sort of, I suppose.
And I think that's
mine definitely does reflect. I mean, mine definitely reflects kind of the sorts of folk music that I like and the type of harmonies I like that you guys put to it. You know, you really captured what I wanted. So then when everybody else sort of went away and said, yeah, we'll find something and put it together and it'll be each of ours. I don't know whether you guys feel that it does do that for you in the way that my one does that for me.
It was a really nice project because suddenly we had ourselves opened out to this whole different way of thinking and approaching stuff. I think we all found that, like, we had this, suddenly we didn't have to put together a whole song, and we could just look for words that meant something or caught our attention and do something with them. And we all did something so completely different with all the things we did. Like we've got a round in there, which I think is coming up next. Mine is a minor Rajib thing.
Mine is so weird. Like,
yeah, but yours is just
so
like yours is like a sentence, and it's about yours is a sentence and it's just about the sound that goes with this simple sentence.
We are getting ahead of ourselves, but I think the later vignette is actually my favorite track on the album, and I'm sure we'll say more about that when we get to it.
But yeah, so in conclusion, it's kind of like our chance to sort of like have our little moments, and
that's exactly what I love about them, actually. The small kind of self-contained nature of them. The fact that it doesn't actually, we don't feel the need to, we don't need to make it up to a certain timestamp and be like, okay, well, it doesn't count if it's not, 2 minutes 40 or whatever. Like having something be, 30 to 90 seconds or whatever, just like it just is what it is. It doesn't need to be any more than that. That's
perfectly formed.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is that
yeah.
I think it's interesting that you describe them as each having your own little moment. But to me, it really symbolizes my entire feelings about this whole album, which is, I touched on it a little bit before, which was that I feel like I did a lot less in this album. And I think that's because when we did the one before us, when we did Of Labour and Love, I really felt like you had loads of great things, but you really didn't have the experience yet of crafting an album necessarily. Whereas I feel like with this one, you all came ready to make a studio album, ready to make that like artistic piece of material, and that meant I didn't need to do a lot really, apart from just kind of let you get on with it, because you had the ideas, you knew what you wanted it to be, and it really feels like, and I'll talk about this a bit more later because it affected my whole approach to the whole thing, but it really felt like you had an album in your heads ready to go to me, and I feel like these vignettes is part of that.
I think that's
So the first vignette is
this first one's yours.
William J. Finn's.
Yeah, it's technically the one that I sort of hang my hat on, but I think I also like the idea that, in theory, on paper, we all kind of brought one of these vignettes each to the group, but I like the idea of something. Once it's submitted to kind of, the band, as it were, it's almost like you kind of relinquish personal control over it, and it becomes something more. Like I've throughout, our entire career as a band, I've always had this recurring thing where the work we do all together is always better than the work that I could do solo. I very much strongly feel that we're all more than the sum of our parts and things like that. So it's kind of, even if one of us, started something off in the first place or whatever, I think it becomes so much more than its humble beginnings or whatever. But yes, the first one is it's a round, a little 3-line round that I think Kate originally gave me the words to it in a kind of a like, it might be nice to do something with this. We had the thought together that it might make a nice round, and I loved the idea. I loved the challenge of writing a round, which I hadn't ever really done before, at least not successfully. And it took quite a long time of not thinking about it. Similarly to Kate's, which was vignette 2, which I'm sure we'll talk more about in a bit. I almost had to forget about it for a good long time before I just kind of woke up one morning with this lightning bolt moment of just being like, out of nowhere, it's like, I think I might finally have the tune for that. And then with very little tweaking, it was almost fully formed. It was just kind of, it was a gift.
Shall we have a listen to it?
Yeah.
Lovely.
Love fain did try to sever friendship's chain, but as he broke the links they joined again. Friendship with love, united still remain. Love fain did try to sever friendship's chain. Love fain did try to sever friendship's chain. Love fain did try to sever friendship's chain. Love fain did try to sever friendship's chain.
It's another one of those Alex and Rosie sing the same parts again, but it's really effective.
And it's one of the things I really like about this track. It's one of the very few times we indulge in a fade out. And I like the fact that the tune happens in such a way that it's really hard to stop singing it.
Yeah.
I think that's perfect for a round. It really neatly kind of ties back into its own beginning, and
I love the never-ending round.
Yeah.
And
this is
what was really nice was that I found this little thing on the bottom of a broadside, years ago, and gave it to Will a long time before we thought about this album. So when we thought about doing this vignette thing, I don't remember sort of saying, oh yes, and you could use that thing that I gave. Maybe I did, I don't know, but I don't remember doing that. But the fact that you then came back with this and went, oh, this is what my one's going to be, it was really nice.
I think
I felt really
this track,
nice about that.
This track touches a bit on what Pete said as well, because we came in with the very clear idea that this was going to have a fade out, and we knew what sort of studio trickery we were going to use on this and how we wanted it to be produced. So we're like, Pete, we're doing this. And you were like, okay.
I'm cool with that.
I remember we kind of developed doing a live fade out for when we do sing it live, which is for some reason just so weirdly satisfying to me. Like
live
doing
fade
a live
out.
fade out.
Did we ever do it? Have we actually done that?
No.
I think maybe.
I don't think we've ever
once.
performed it live, but I think
We
we've
did it
sung
once.
it in rehearsals, maybe.
But then maybe collapsed into giggles, I suspect.
I was gonna say, I have distinct memories of the practicing in the green room at, is it Walthamstow Folk Club? In that sort of theatre-y place. It was a really echoey room, and then I was practicing, and that's where we kind of finally put the thing together. And then practicing the fade out, and we're all just like, but it was also a really echoey room, so it was really hard to do an effective fade out because
it was really hard to fade out and not slow down as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, for real.
I know, quieter does not mean slower.
It is also very briefly worth mentioning that I love the message behind the words as well. I think that because this album was happening at least a very similar time, there was quite a lot of crossover at the point that we realized that, I think the time as a band were in this sort of format at least was kind of drawing to a close. And I like the idea that that round kind of sums up how I feel about that as well. The fact that it's like, it's not things finishing, it's the bonds remaining solid and not being broken. It's not the end of one thing, it's just kind of things continuing in a different form and all kinds of things. I like the ethos of it.
So it's interesting because the next song on this track listing is actually somewhat of a Teacups legend, and it's actually one of the first sea shanties we arranged and were really excited about. And including us, many people have assumed it's on other albums.
Well, the story, that's a funny one because it was meant to be on the on Of Labour and Love, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes, Pete.
It's the Phantom track.
The Phantom track. What was it? I wasn't missing the whole thing. I don't think I was missing the whole thing.
First
No,
verse.
it was the first verse.
First verse. That's
You mixed the thing and you sent it to us. Yeah,
that's
you sent
right,
us
yeah.
this track.
It's like, give me your feedback. And we went, it
We
sounds really good.
And I was like,
You
he
do-
must know that the first verse is there. He must know. I'll just say just in case.
Yeah.
You do know.
It's like,
you're
is
missing the first verse.
there a reason why it starts at verse 2, Pete?
That's right. I think I think it'll become obvious to the listener when they hear it how that might have happened. Maybe it won't. But maybe what we'll do is we'll play it and then I'll admit to how it happened.
We'll play it and then you'll make your excuses.
You'll think about your excuses for the 3 minutes of the song, and then
Yeah.
That's it. So here it is.
Captain, Captain, you are a dandy. Way shiny, oh.
Captain, Captain, you love your brandy. Way, shiny, oh, won't you ferry me over to Dover? Way, shiny, oh, won't you ferry me over to Dover? Way,
What percent shanty would you say you're currently singing at in this song, Will?
Queenstown to Dover,
It's a low percentage.
the 100
Maybe like
miles
30?
are over.
30% shanty?
Way, shiny.
30.
It increases as the song goes on.
Oh, hold on.
100 miles are over.
It's about
That's a bit
30%,
more.
but literally for the phrase 100 times, it maybe ups to like 35.
Captain, how deep is the water? Way, shiny, oh. It measures 1 inch, 6 feet and a quarter.
I find it a kind of. We'll wait for Pete's excuse, but I'm somewhat happy we ended up recording it for this album because I feel like when we used to sing it, we used to sing it like a shanty and just be like. And I feel like we do a much nicer, subtle job of it now and let the song be itself rather than.
I was going to say something really similar.
Yeah.
I'm glad it went on the third album, not the second album, because I'm certain it sounds much better on the third album than it would have on the second.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Darn, we gave him an excuse.
Rivers, rivers, rivers are a rolling way, shiny.
I would say we're maybe up to about 60% shanty on this one.
Oh, no, we've up to maybe 40, 45. You underestimate my power.
Yeah, there's a reason why we don't have some
Alright,
tracks on the
Anakin.
album.
Captain, you are a dandy, way, shiny, oh. Captain, Captain, you love your brandy. Way, shiny, oh.
I'm also talking a real big game about this shanty voice, and like, can I back it up?
What was that, Pete?
Yeah, what was
Did you get a little snippet of something else there?
Just because it's in iTunes, so it's just jumping on to the next.
Tell you what, we never
have we
had
got
these
permission
issues
for
when
that?
I was playing the tracks.
I don't-
Pete.
the thing is, the listener would never have known if you hadn't just pointed that straight out at that moment. So,
Yeah, I know, but we're embarrassing you because we're still going to wait for your excuse, right?
Yeah.
no, that's right. The missing verse was just a really subtle way of me telling you I think it should be on the third album. No.
Yeah.
Well, this will give for those that are interested in this kind of thing some insight into it, I suppose. So we tend to move between recording some stuff to a click and some stuff not to a click, depending on what the song is. But then even the stuff that we do record to a click, we kind of build a fluctuating click, essentially. But obviously, there becomes times where that would be impossible. So with this one, it wasn't possible to do the first verse to a click, clearly. And the way we wanted to do it was to have that free-flowing first verse and then it to kind of get into a rhythm as it went on, like you'd expect from a shanty. And then other break the myth for people, I suppose, is we don't always record a song in order. So it's very much like recording a film in some respects. We'll do certain parts depending on so many different things, where we are in the day, how warmed up a voice is, any of those number of things. So this was one of those ones where we didn't record the first verse first because we were just going to do the other bits and then come back to it. Except obviously we never came back to it. And then I didn't really realise we'd never come back to it because I had this file there with loads of verses in and just, yeah.
In your defence,
we never had one.
None of us realised that we hadn't recorded that either
don't
until Rosie
take it
was
off
listening
him.
to the feedback. Like,
I mean, I accept that it was my responsibility to keep note of these things. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Yeah, what's next?
This is a great one of yours, Kate. So I think you've probably got something interesting to say about this.
Oh, well, this is another one we've been singing for absolutely ages. We were probably singing this one at least by the time the last one came out. So I think most people know the story behind this one, which is that I did a master's after the undergrad degree, and was looking at a book of street cries and just thought they were really sweet. Kind of the same as the vignettes, really. I quite often get more captivated by short snippets of things than I do by entire songs, and just thought they were really nice. And it was a shame that they didn't have any tunes because it was just the texts. And it reminded me of a Tim Hart and Maddie Pryor very short street cry track that they'd done in the 70s, I think, called Turkey Rhubarb. And I thought, oh, that would be nice if we all had one each, and they all sort of stood alone but also harmonised together as well. And I could have had a go at it, but I'll be honest, I'd still be trying to get it to work now. And I know that Will is much more talented at those things than I am. So I kind of went to Will and said, how about we, try and do this? Here's the Turkey Rhubarb tune.
How about we try and do this?
Yeah, so I've had this idea, Will, and can you do it for me, please? This is essentially what happened. Yeah, and Will did an absolutely brilliant job of getting these other three tunes to go with it and also sound like really good tunes on their own, and we sang it, and we did feel pretty pleased with ourselves for quite a while. And although I had heard of the film Oliver and I knew it was very famous, I hadn't ever seen it. And then one Christmas, a couple of Christmases ago, it was on, and I heard this Who Will Buy My Sweet Blooming Lavender, and I thought, somebody obviously had that idea quite some time ago, and then felt quite stupid. So
well,
here we are.
I loved the idea as soon as you brought it to me, Kate, and I think here's a story that the public won't know, and I don't know if you guys all know or not, but I relished the challenge, but I really liked the idea of the style of writing this one is quite influenced by Alistair Anderson. Because I remember when we had a guest lecture or two from Alistair, and he talked about some of the way in which he writes tunes. When he writes tunes with multiple parts, he deliberately tries to not write it as like, here is the tune, here is harmony 1, here's harmony 2, or whatever, because he's well aware about the longitudinal view of a tune. Like when you think about it historically over a very long time, if you're very lucky, something you write might still be being played 100 years from now, and in the intervening time you don't know how likely it is or not that it's going to remain in its first form. It might break apart, or it might kind of so if someone picks up a tune one day and they don't realize that it's only one part of a group of tunes, you don't want to be picking up something and thinking this is a harmony part. It needs to kind of almost stand alone as its own melody. It could survive solo. And I liked the idea of trying to write three extra tunes that stood as tunes in their own right, but that also laid on top of each other really nicely. They complemented, but it wasn't this one is the main one and the rest all supported. And that was kind of my whole challenge behind it, and how well or not I succeeded, I guess, isn't for me to say, but I really enjoyed doing it.
This is one of two tracks on the album that was an absolute nightmare to record.
Well, wasn't that partly because I had a cold the first time we recorded it, and we had to go, and I sounded...
two reasons. Yeah, there's two reasons. That's one of them. The other is because I was just thinking about this, but then we had to record this album a bit differently to how we'd done previously anyway, because, am I right in thinking, Al, when we did Of Labour and Love, you hadn't moved to the States yet?
Yeah, we were still just fresh out of uni. I hadn't really... I think the idea is sung, but I hadn't even started a processing or a visa or anything yet. Yeah.
That's right. So... although we didn't necessarily have more time in the studio, we were less restricted as to like you being in the country. Whereas this album, we had to be structured in a way that we could get all of your stuff done while you were here, essentially, which meant that because when we did the second album, there was a lot more, although we did do things separately and you layered things up and we multi-tracked it in that way, we kind of worked on 2 or 3 songs at a time and then we moved on to another 2, 3, etc. Whereas with this one, we were working on all 19 tracks all the way through, really, which meant that certain parts had to be down for you to be able to get your parts in, essentially. And then it comes to the question as to whose parts do you need to be able to sing along with to do it, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, this was one that we just threw down a load of guide leads so that the parts were there, and which meant that then working that out afterwards was a bit of a...
Well, I'm terribly sorry for not having one lead tune, Pete.
This
Yeah,
is also
exactly.
an issue with another passing around the tune issue. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, Street
Yeah, they're the
Cries.
ones.
Let's have a listen to it.
Turkey rhubarb, turkey rhubarb, turkey rhubarb I sell. I come here from Turkey to make you all well. Don't you all know me, for my name it is Dan, and I am the celebrated turkey rhubarb man. Turkey rhubarb, turkey rhubarb, turkey rhubarb I sell. I come here from Turkey to make
I had the same problem with this that I have with everything that's got any even vaguely high notes in for me. That line, I come here from Turkey. I mean, the number of times we did that line until I was going, yeah, that's okay, that one's not terrible.
Gentlemen, attend to my cry. Put your hands
I just like to
in
say
your
I appreciate
pockets and
particularly
bring
this one,
forth your
the panning you've done on this,
knives.
Pete, because it is exactly as people would be looking at us on stage, and it's really lovely.
Yeah.
And sharpen all the
Well, that's quite a
scissors
conscious
for you,
choice all the way
maidens
through
and
this
you
album,
wives.
actually.
Young
This is one of the few where I go quite hard on it, actually. There's only this and maybe 1 or 2 other tracks that I'd done that on, whereas the rest of it, unlike the previous album, is pretty consistent all the way through the album, the panning, which is not something I normally do, but I did purposely on this one.
My mop is so big it might serve as a wig for a judge if he had no objections. And as for my brooms, they'll sweep dirty rooms and they'll make the dust fly to perfection. My mop is so big it might serve as a wig for a judge if he had
The one thing I do remember about recording this one is because we're all recording it in bits that was kind of hard to do for everyone. That we all ended up, because we've had to sing it so many times, we ended up all singing it completely different to how we would normally sing it together. So we all then had to sort of relearn how to sing each other's parts again. It was very funny
with my
and annoying.
dainty hot rolls when mornings are chilly. Sweet Fanny, young Billy, your hearts they will comfort my gay little souls. Let fame puff a trumpet for muffin and crumpet. They cannot compare with my dainty hot
And
rolls.
as always, it is always fun to laugh at rude-sounding words.
Muffin.
Yeah, you can absolutely judge a folk club audience by whether or not they find the muffin and crumpet line funny or not.
Gay souls.
I would just a good praise for Pete again here, because trying to make this bit sound any good on a recording is a hard feat, I think, and because having us all singing different verses and different words is such a mess of a sound. It could be, and you've made it sound really good.
I think this also probably half counts as our.
Oh no.
Oh no, we cut off a little early there.
Sorry.
This probably counts as our three quarters of a fade out.
I was trying to make it so that I could unmute and talk at the same time and press pause. I pressed them in the wrong order.
Oh no.
But it's fine because I'm adding the music in later and no one's going to know all of this. I appreciate that, Al, because this is one of the few that did take a bit of time actually in that essence, because you're right, it's essentially 4 tunes all happening at once, and you want to be able to hear all of those and hear it as a thing together as well. And I think that's why it had to be such a hard pan thing, really, so that you can try and find the space in the audio listening experience. And that's my one wanky phrase for the
Very
the
good.
session.
Right. Next one I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I'd really like to just jump into this one, partly because we're only 7 tracks into a 19-track album and been going for a while, but also because I just don't have a lot to say about it, really.
Well, let's just do it.
Deep blue sea, Willie, deep blue sea. Deep blue sea, Willie, deep blue sea. Deep blue sea, Willie, deep blue sea. It was Willie what got drowned in the deep blue sea. Captain,
Love the swells in this one. How it really kind of swells forward and pulls away again. It's lovely movement.
I've also forgotten that for some reason I'm singing a very high tenor part and you're singing a lower part than me, Will.
Captain, did he sail with you? It was Willie what got drowned in the deep blue sea. The wind blew high and the waves.
For some reason, singing this particular verse live, I always kind of mess it up. Like, the wind is always blowing something, and so every time I listen to it, I'm just like, oh, we're getting it right. Good job, us. You know.
I have exactly the same problem with this live.
High and the waves grew strong.
Because the it does work both ways, doesn't it?
It's amazing how easy it is to get something right when you can just start again if you mess it up. Thanks for that, Pete.
So his shroud with a silken thread. So his shroud with a silken.
Now, one thing I think we've done really effectively in this arrangement, there's not really a lot of harmony changes. There's not really a lot of ins and outs of vocals and parts. It really is all about all of us singing together and delivering the song and really singing the story, singing the words, and like we do a really good job of it. And I've forgotten how much of a good job we've done of just telling a story.
Son, bring him back to me. Golden sun, bring him back to me. Golden sun, bring him back to me. It was Willie what got drowned in the deep blue sea. Deep blue sea, Willie, deep blue sea. Deep blue sea.
I do very distinctly have memories of being very pained by the end of this. And Pete just really been very encouraging because this is so high in my range. And I have vision. You know, you were talking about last time about my accordion dance. It wasn't on this one, but this was more that I had my fists clenched and just like by the end.
I thought you meant it was like your boy band moment.
Oh,
what got drowned in the deep blue sea.
I think there's also something particularly difficult about deep and blue so many times.
Yeah.
All the way through.
Yeah.
Now that the story you just told, Rosie, about getting the words the wrong way around. I mean, I think we all did that, and we've successfully done it live where we've sung it wrong, but we've all sung the same thing. We have this kind of weird psychological, but it brought back a memory of a time we revisited As I Rode Out from the first album, and we performed it live. It was a request, and we thought, oh well, we'll give it a go. We haven't done it for a long time, but it'll be fun. And we all completely, without communicating, missed one verse completely.
I mean, we finished the song flawlessly.
The same verse.
Yeah.
We got to the end, or completely in lockstep, and it wasn't until we'd finished the song that we kind of looked at each other and was like, I don't remember singing that verse.
The magic of 10 years of singing together, right?
Yeah. Mind meld.
So we move to your vignette now, Kate, which I think you touched on a little earlier. I don't know if you have any more to add.
Not really. Just that it was. I used to live in Cambridge. Lived there for about 10 years, and there's a museum there called the Fitzwilliam Museum, which is well worth a visit. And I just saw these words written on a jug one day, a harvest jug, and I wrote them down literally on a torn off bit of paper from a notebook I had, and it sort of knocked about on my desk for 15 years and about as many house moves. And I'd had a really, really horrible year. There was some illness in my family, and I'd had an unpleasant breakup, and I'd been living in this flat that wasn't very nice, and it turned out our neighbours downstairs, who'd been very, very noisy, and I hadn't been getting any sleep for a year, and I'd been getting a lot of migraines and things. They turned out to be quite unpleasant criminals, and I was just moving out, and the last couple of nights before you move out of somewhere, you've probably packed most things, and I remember everything was packed, and I was in a sleeping bag on a mattress, just like really ready to get out, and start afresh kind of thing. And I'd turned the light out and I couldn't sleep, and all of a sudden I just went, oh, I might have a little idea for that thing. And even though everything was packed, I knew where it was, and I went and I just got this bit of paper, and I sat up till about 2 a.m, sort of just going and I ended up with this tune. And yeah, that's why I haven't ever done anything sort of solo album, because I write about one verse every 15 years. So
if I'm not mistaken, I think that there's a recording of this kind of process of yours, or at least it sounds very much like it, on as a part of the Kickstarter awards. We did a bootleg kind of recordings of some of our sort of lesser known rehearsals and just like workings out of songs that maybe never went anywhere, and like there were some tracks on there that even I had never heard, and I remember coming across one of them and getting halfway through the track and thinking like, my word, I think this is Kate working out the harvest jug. This is iconic. This is amazing. This is the artistic process, like right here.
Oh, God. I don't know why anybody went for that reward. I mean, why anyone wants to listen to that load of old chat, I don't know, but there we go.
Well,
but yeah, that's how it happened.
That's a great story to accompany the song.
Smooth Pete.
Now I am come for to supply your workmen, when in harvest dry they do labour hard and sweat. Good drink is better for them than meat. In winter time when it is cold, I likewise then good drink can hold. Both seasons do the same require, and most men do good drink desire.
I think the first track in all of this that we've not spoken over at all. Partly because it's so good and partly because it's not very long, exactly.
I was really happy with it though, because I remember kind of wanting it to sound very sort of English and very warm, and and I remember coming to you guys and going, I don't mind what you do, but I don't want anything clever. I just want, if it sounds like it should resolve. No funny business now, any of you, kind of thing. And and that's exactly what I got, and I'm thrilled to bits with it. So thank you.
Yeah. Really great song. I mean,
yeah,
that's one that I found my kind of melodic harmony brain just kind of slotted in with really nicely, and it just sort of just had a really good flow for harmony writing for me.
This is one of the few vignettes you've actually sung out a lot, and it's we often in a live set. I remember those days we could perform live. Often in a live set, we would just sort of shove it on without introducing it after an applaud of another song, and then you sort of just see the stunned silence as we finish the song, and it's sort of like over. But people are like, "Is it over?" It's like 20 seconds. Yeah. And normally it involves one of us having to go, "Thank you."
Right. Well, in the previous album of Labor and Love, there's a few tracks on that we mentioned kind of originally came about through some of our final recitals in the folk degree.
Track 9, right on cue, the cats are arriving into
there we go. Track 9, it's as if they can sense it. But yes, in Of Labor and Love, there's a few tracks on that, things like Journey's End. I think there's one or two more as well, that originally came from final recitals, and I had to wait until the third album for my final recital song. But the next track is Man of the Earth, a Bernie Parry song, which again, we've been
as well.
Thanks. We've been working on it for quite a long time, and eventually got it down. I don't know that there's much to say about it.
I would just like to say that the when we were coming up with the track listing order for the album, we had a rough idea, but the pairing of the Harvest Jug and this one is just mint, because
very true.
They have a very similar tonal approach. They're different songs, but they segue together so nicely in like topic and in sound and in it's just mint.
They're good earthy songs.
Yeah, you should listen to it without us babbling on between. Yeah,
highly recommended.
Each day as I go through the old shanty town, where the sheds and allotments all stand, I see an old man on his land, with a fork or a spade in his hand. And he's there in all weather, in sunshine.
I do love something in 3/4 time as well. We don't do enough in waltz time.
Is he happy or
Street prizes of waltz.
Oh, I haven't the time for to ask. A man of the earth, a man of the soil, in his lonely allotment he labours and toils. And he's not much to do since he turned 65, so he took to his garden.
It's funny though, because that line about turning 65 and not having much to keep you alive, then we've had quite a few folk club audience members come up and say, well, I'm over 65, I've got plenty to do, not having a go at you specifically. Sorry.
There was no other work in the town, so they had him both fettered and bound.
I think what I love about this one is I just think all of you sing it brilliantly. I just think the tone of everybody's voice on this one is just so rich and so lovely, with some lovely little swells in the right place. I just think it's really well sung all around.
There's something about it that's very anthemic.
The recording's okay, I guess.
A man of the soil, in his lonely allotment he labours and toils. and he's not much to do since he turned 65. So he took to his garden to keep him alive, and I think it's his joy and his pride. Da, 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 da. Each Saturday evening he's down at the pub.
It's something that you'll never be able to really know, but if we hadn't done this with instruments first, I'd love to know whether we would have ended up with the little bit we use for the intro and the in-between, the end of the chorus and the verse.
Neighbours and friends, some things from his garden he grows.
Because I don't think we've ever done that with a song we've just arranged from scratch,
Or they'll stop all his pension he knows. A man of the earth.
I do have that sort of like wholesome accordion memory of this, for sure. I think that definitely influenced, like we were saying in the last, talking about the last album, about how I have a bad habit of making my voice sound like the rhythm of my accordion. But actually, this one is that waltzy like run da 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 run da da is become really helpful in me singing this one, I think.
Yeah, I can still really hear the instruments, when we sing it.
I do think of it as it doesn't actually sound that much like it listening back, but I always thought of it as a really poppy number.
With a fork or a spade in his hand. But I cannot linger, no, I must be gone, for I work at the ironworks too. I started there 5 years ago, only 45 more to go. A man of the earth, a man of the soil, in his lonely allotment he labours and toils. And he's not much to do since he turned 65, so he took to his garden to keep him alive, and I think it's his joy and his pride. A man of the earth, a man of the soil, in his lonely allotment he labours and toils. And he's not much to do since he turned 65, so he took to his garden to keep him alive, and I think it's his joy and his pride. I think it's his joy and his pride. I think it's his joy and his pride.
That is just one of the most fun songs to sing, full stop, because it's such a good... the words, the tune, the fact, I think, like what Pete said about us singing it really well, I think all our parts fit so comfortably in our voices. Like often there's a little bit, we got 4 singers, we're always going to have to compromise slightly on a part that either sounds a bit clunky or goes slightly out of our comfort zone to make the sound we want. But that one, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but for everybody that sort of just sits so lovelily in our voices. It's just lovely to sing.
That one's always a good time.
I really enjoy the sound of it just overall. I was just listening to it thinking, I'm really proud of this one. I hadn't even realised when we were doing it. It just sounds so rich, the whole thing. And part of it probably is what you're saying there, Al.
Yeah.
I think, I think we achieve it a lot, which I'm really thankful for, but it is lovely when the final product of a song or a track sounds so similar to the idea you originally had in your head. Yeah, like I think we realised it really well.
And now for something completely different.
I think this is a good jump from that one into this one, though. I think it's a nice moment in the album.
Definitely.
Sailing over the Dogger Bank, now wasn't it a treat? The wind was blowing east northeast, we had to give a sheet. You should to see us rally, the window blowing free on the passage from the Dogger Bank to Great Grimsby. So watch her twigger, she's a proper Juby-Jew. Give a sheet, let her rip with the boys to pull her through. You should to see us rally, the window blowing free on the passage from the Dogger Bank to Great Grimsby.
Our captain, he's a shangaroo, she likes a drop of good ale. Our first mate, he's a ripstone pippin, he's been in many a jail. Our third mate, she's a bushranger, the worst of all the crew. A scoundrel and a packet rat and a sort of a buckaroo. So watch her, Twigger, she's a proper Juby-Jew.
I really like how much crossover you and me, Alex, have in this. And like, it's really not just a here's a bass line, here's a tenor line. We cross a lot.
And it happens with Kate and Rosie's parts as well. They're in unison, they're crossing over a bit. There's no set parts in this that are obvious to the SATB. It's really lovely.
Flash girls, can she cut a shine? She can do a double shuffle on the Knickerbocker line. So watch her.
I really like the way that quite a lot in this one we've started in unison, and towards the end of the line just sort of opened out into harmony like that.
On the passage from the Dogger Bank to Great Grimsby. Now we're the boys to make some noise when we get home from sea.
Shanty 100%!
Say 100% shanty at this moment.
If there's any point, really sort of put the pedal to the metal, it's the song.
But at least for me, it's not even a matter of choice. It is so high in my range that moment that there is 100% shanty or no singing at that point.
I mean, this is one of the hardest ones to mix in many ways, because I think you all had such a strong idea of what you wanted it to sound like. But making it as big and aggressive as I think you imagined it, that high in Alex's range in particular, is quite hard work.
Bit of an ask.
I apologise in retrospect, Pete.
It's all right.
I remember that one came from, I heard another shanty group singing it, which I really enjoyed listening to.
So Pete will have edited this out on post, but we've just been listening, I think, to Ross, is it Ross Cooper?
It is Ross Cooper and Tom.
Yeah, I thought so, yeah.
I remember hearing that one.
Get their albums on my website.
Another...
Go ahead, Kate.
Sorry, Kate.
It's fine. Only trouble is I can't remember what I was going to say now.
You heard another shanty group doing it.
Oh yes, I heard another shanty group doing it, and thought, oh yeah, we'll have to have a go at that one. That'd be really fun to do. And I remember I was writing up my master's dissertation, and I remember literally sitting in front of the computer, going, shall I write the chapter about the historical context of the Northeast in the 18th century, or shall I rearrange the lyrics to Dogger Bank? I wonder which one I'm going to spend the next hour doing. Yeah, didn't get much dissertation done that day.
I like the way you referred to it as another shanty group, because many people think of us as a shanty group, and we are far not a shanty group. And partly fools
we don't
to
have
ourselves.
Uniforms for a start.
Yeah. And partly fools for ourselves, we've often
apart from today.
agreed. Yeah.
We're all wearing blue today.
Oh, yeah.
We're matching, and we didn't even communicate, which is rather lovely.
Yeah.
I remember us all being very surprised the first time we were invited to a shanty festival.
But
we're flattered, but like, why?
His fine one, his darling, sink him in his hammock, boys, he's gone far away. Sink him in his hammock, boys, he's gone far away.